I had a buddy that I went with. I said, who is that? He said, that's Chandra Gill. I said, well, what year is she in school? He said, well, she's just a freshman. Oh, God.
I knew of Dr. Gill as a school activist.
And I remember her pretty much leading a call for individuals to be a lot more proactive.
And immediately when I met her, I just recognized her as a young person with a great deal of talent and just a very good person.
She came down as a first-year student and got right involved.
She is not a shy, retiring person.
The kind of activism that we've seen in the late 80s, early 90s, is beginning to wane. And Chandra came in and got involved in community service right off.
And we found her to be just a joy to have in the college and in the department.
Came in right from Chicago, from the university, and went straight to the hood.
She constantly worked with young people here in the area.
There's a lot of poverty in Champaign and a lot of troubled homes.
Started doing work right there, developing mentoring programs.
Most thing that I can most remember is her active with Del Teens.
The girls connected with Chandra as Del Teens.
Del Teens is a program for us, kind of like a little sister mentor program through the sorority that she's involved with.
Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
And Chandra was the lead of that. Got together to mentor to young girls as young as middle school.
We participated in several community service activities.
We did fundraisers and car washes and drives, college tours and soup kitchens, and we did it all.
Brought kids over to the campus, had them have activities here on campus to demystify the university.
And just to direct them in the path of being young ladies.
Guide rules.
Advice about how to keep their lives in order.
The good and the bad things about being women and how to handle those things.
It focused on education.
Exposing them to like out-of-state universities and directing them to become university students.
And basically she served as my mentor, encouraged me to go to college, was there every step of the way as it relates to me going to college.
She almost became like, you know, kind of like a little parent to me and a bunch of my friends, really.
And I still look up to her today.
You've got to make some good decisions. And that's what I think Del Teens did. Provided exposure, brought kids over to the campus to help make sense of it for them and to let them know that they too belong here, that it could be their university also.
She did a really good job.
Very good job. Very good job. Very pleased with her.
Beautiful! 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 What's your word, Lionel? Say it again. What's your word? Say it again. Say it again. What's your word? Beautiful! Say it again. I am beautiful. I am beautiful. I am beautiful. I am beautiful.
There was a game on one winter night.
A mind blower when I think about what happened on that day.
She and a peer of hers were at a basketball game in Urbana.
She was on an outing with teenagers that our sorority was mentoring.
She took her Del Teen students to that basketball game.
I think it was Chan and Jeannie and Monique and Tasha, of course. For her to say that she was going to a basketball game to support was common.
This was another event.
And they were going to a game. It was a very intense game.
Decatur Eisenhower. Yes. It was Decatur Eisenhower because it was a packed game and there were people standing by the doors.
Really tight game. Exchange of scoring.
There was a shot made. I think it was a three-pointer. It was a close game.
Urbana scores to tie the game up.
And from there it went crazy.
A group of folks actually raise up and stand up in their seats.
Everyone jumped out of their seats.
The fans jumping up, all kinds of craziness happening.
The energy in the room was at a level that probably should have been reserved for a professional team.
A couple of folks got onto the floor.
Stepped over the line.
By the time everyone had sat down, including me and anyone I could see, Jeannie and Monique had left, because wasn't Monique on crutches?
Chandra and Tasha were in the stands.
They were picked out
by an off-duty Urbana police officer who was then security at them.
Security officer who was monitoring the game
had come to her friend and to tell her that, you know, you can't step over the line.
said something to Tasha. I honestly have no idea what he said to her because he was really close to her and he was kind of whispering it to her.
Apparently some argument back and forth started.
From then, another police officer came up.
They were going to take her outside and ask her to leave the building, but she didn't want to go alone.
Tasha got dragged out, Chan followed.
And this goes out into the hallway.
Tasha got dragged in the hallway, and after Chan left, I guess Savitri and I and Asia and Javonda oh, yeah, and Prentice got into the hallway. The police told us that if we didn't leave, we were going to get arrested. And then I think we just stayed out there.
Actually starts to handle Tasha.
Tasha was on the ground and that there was some force being used that wasn't necessary.
Chan steps in to break it up.
In the process of all that, Chandra had an epileptic seizure.
My granddaughter does have epileptic attacks from time to time.
She falls
and accidentally made contact with the police officer.
Chan was on the floor having a seizure.
And they literally put handcuffs on her.
Handcuff her.
She went unconscious at that point.
She passed out.
Has to go to the hospital.
Did their best to try to arrest and detain her on the spot.
I know, Chan got taken away in the ambulance and they wouldn't let anyone ride with her.
Once they were to the hospital and everything was under control.
Handcuffed to the bed.
A lot of us church members went down to support her.
For Bishop Gwynn praying in the waiting room with 50 people at least.
They went to the hospital to issue some kind of arrest warrant.
They pretty much charged her with assaulting a police officer.
And it was that set of events that just set things off in terms of a frightening, maddening story that, you know, we all know too well in terms of the events that took place on that day.
I'll never forget, first thing in the morning, I got up and I went out to the jail and there was already like a crowd of people out there for her, chanting, "Let Chandra go." I mean, it was unbelievable.
There were so many people that were showing up in support that, you know, it became an automatic news story. There was tons of television cameras.
And I just remember phone calls pouring in, emails pouring in.
The religious community here responded.
People came out of the woodwork to show their support, to say, I saw something that nobody even knew that they were at the game, or, you know, like, I know her and nobody even knows who they are.
It escalated.
At first I thought, this is a misunderstanding, and the police and the prosecutors would recognize that this is a misunderstanding, and this thing would simply be resolved with some kind of discussions. And then to see it snowball.
When the altercation happened, she was just another black woman. The whole notion that she was a student or not, that came out later, and I think it added layers of complexity because she couldn't be summed up as just some belligerent person that was out there to do no good.
When that incident happened, she was conducting surveys. She was actually taking a group of underprivileged teenagers to a basketball game.
It had to surprise the police. The cops had no idea what was coming.
And I think that was the whole push of why she was being prosecuted.
When a member of the police department is challenged about the appropriateness of their response to an event, especially an event in the African American community or in communities of color in particular, they close ranks.
But it made a lot of sense when you think about the potential lawsuits that could take place from what took place at that incident at Urbana High School.
The police in Champaign, Urbana, pursued it.
And then once the trial started, it was just as crazy.
September, October, November, you had the court proceedings that were taking place.
By that time, Chan was in grad school and still doing the community service piece.
We all were very much active in going over to the court to hear the trial.
Difficult time for her, for us, for this community.
From how it was displayed in the newspaper, it was more political.
The principal of our high school got fired because of it. The principal handed over the tapes to us for her to give to her lawyer. Police came and there were no tapes to be had. He was asked to resign.
More importantly to me was during the trial.
It was just amazing to kind of see the intensity on the part of the state's attorney to prosecute these two individuals.
The accusations about what she actually did, it was just unbelievable.
Aggravated battery, resisting arrest, and mob action.
They came out with some stuff, with evidence that we couldn't even figure out where it would have come from.
The practice of the police officers was egregious, to say the least.
I just think they were out to get her.
There would be this closing of ranks around testimony.
Everything from personal vendetta to wrongful identification.
Lack of judgment racism.
Happenstance.
Just had it all backwards, bottom line.
They kind of profiled her specifically and the other young lady.
Not of her character, you know, the way that it was explained.
You know, as the things progressed, and by her being so outspoken, they focused only on her.
Tremendous amount of disconcerting comments toward Chandra.
To see the state's attorneys try to paint her as this sort of almost terrorist.
I remember attending a couple of her court appearances, and I just remember it was so hard for me because I had never seen her cry.
And during the trial, there was something that happened that I still use as a case with my graduate students here at UIC. You see this in the court transcripts. One of the arresting officers, the off-duty officer, could not identify Chandra or Tasha in the courtroom. If the two defendants cannot be identified by the arresting officer, why is the case still in court?
I remember there were state troopers there that night that testified.
Two state troopers were actually behind watching all of this,
saying that they didn't see anything and that they were back in their seats by the time that the buzzer rang.
You got two state troopers testifying that these were not the two women or two people who were on the floor. The tape of the hallway altercation becomes inadmissible.
The videotape, that's what I was telling you, it flashed from floor to floor. It didn't even really show like completely that section of the hallway, but it did at least attest to the fact that someone was laying on the floor.
This is almost a presumption that this person is going to be guilty.
Presumption of guilt that's already burdened on your head, especially in a place like Champaign that has these very hidden racial tensions that very rarely come to light.
It was pretty embarrassing for me because I'm from Champaign.
That they had no way of sorting through something that was at worst a minor mistake of someone stepping over the line at a basketball game versus a felony conviction that could affect someone for the rest of their life. It was incredible to see that happen. Even today, I think that everybody who was associated with pushing that thing forward ought to be ashamed of their professional roles.
Let's back up a little bit. We're talking about ideology now, right? There are people who will say, I'm not racist, and be racist to the core. Yeah. Largely because of, number one, how we define racism, and who wants to be associated with that publicly. And then personally, I don't want to offend you publicly, but I'll offend you in another way. And a lot of times it's just ignorance. You got conscious racism, subconscious racism, disconscious racism, subtle racism, all types of racism that's been studied. But the reality is, I'm not racist. And if everybody's saying, I'm not racist, then why do people think racism exists? Okay? So how we communicate these realities are very important, but it's a little deeper than what we say. It's sometimes what we may not know how to say.
I was just amazed at the outcome of the trial.
The verdict came out that they found Chandra guilty.
People just walked out completely crying. Chan just looked completely shocked.
And I just remember her leaving and just like sobbing, and I didn't even know what to say to her.
She would have to spend her adult life with a felony. And the amazing thing was her peer, you know, who was supposedly had assaulted a police officer, a female police officer, in a manner that would damage like bones in her wrist, that she would be found not guilty. The judge didn't even find this ruling to be fair. So much so that they wanted Chandra to write a letter of apology. And in many ways that would serve as punishment. You know, because she would have to do all these hours of community service, and they had already seen her record of community service. She's already done like 3 billion hours of community service. But they wanted her to write a formal letter of apology to the police officer. And we all were like, are you kidding me? So I believe she wrote the letter. I'm not quite sure what the specifics of it were, but that would have been the most sarcastic letter I ever wrote in my entire life.
I think the other thing that really got me angry about this and hurt me was to see how silent the school district was about this whole thing.
And it was really disheartening to see this community really being responsible for killing her spirit.
I don't know that she will have a stronger test of her faith.
I don't think she is too keen about coming down here for anything that she don't have to come down here for. And that's really sad. Yeah, I miss her too.
There was a time when Chandra could see herself living in Champaign, having an impact in this area, and unfortunately that situation just really turned her away from that.
The weight that that conviction would carry, as well as the perception of the weight that that conviction would carry, would damage her ability. Well, she was issued a felony, and thinking about it, as she's trying to finish up her Ph.D., she couldn't apply for federal funding to assist her in her own educational pursuits and the completion of her degree. But equally important, if she wanted to go out and apply for a job, all jobs do background checks and everything else. So if you wanted to work, as I do, as a university professor, that's what she was training herself to be, as an educator, she would have a very difficult time obtaining work simply because she would have a felony on her record, and the felony would read, you know, assault of a police officer.
When I heard about her having a record that was considered a felony, I was most disturbed.
I think it was horrible.
Why should Dr. Gill be subjugated to making an application to work somewhere and somebody say, we don't hire ex-felons, or you can't work for us if you've got any, well, so what was it for? Well, doesn't matter whether it was supervision, doesn't matter what it was. If there's been a conviction, then you are an ex-felon.
But the response on the part of the campus and the part of the community, on the part of anybody who knew her, was tremendous.
It seemed like years of hard work and just people vouching for her.
She would kind of gather all these written statements in support of her. And I mean, I'm talking about, it's got to be a book like this big.
She, when it's telling us about all the letters that people had written, because we had written some ourselves.
Me and my whole family wrote letters.
She would go before the legislature to have this felony removed from her record.
I testified in her favor. I remember Jesse Jackson was at the hearing.
Reverend Jesse Jackson took a lead and supported her.
He testified.
And she was like, you know, read this part right here. And so we read it, and I looked, and she kind of looked at me and smiled. And I was like, are you serious?
It was very easy to testify at the hearing for Dr. Gill to suggest that the Prisoner Review Board should recommend to the governor a pardon.
The record was expunged, shall we say.
When I saw that email, there was like a sliver of hope and justice that something was done.
It said that she was pardoned.
She was pardoned, and I was excited.
There was a sense of relief and vindication, but also a sense of, why did she have to go through this? Why?
It took her, what, double the time that she normally would take to get her PhD.
As I reviewed Dr. Gill's case, it never should have been a case in the first place.
The emotional stress that she's had to go through to do that, what it cost her in terms of launching her own career. I think the pardon is a good step.
I know just eons of cases similar where individuals never should have been charged with anything. They certainly never should have been convicted, and they certainly never should have had a record.
Never should have gotten that far. But a pardon is exactly what she should receive.
There's a reason that it was pardoned. There's a reason that it turned out the way that it did.
And she's an upstanding member of our community, and she's a fantastic person. And the fact that she was pardoned, as far as I'm concerned, that's the end of that.
Well deserved.
So her name is clear and free like it was before anything ever happened.
She fought the good fight and eventually won.
Vote early, vote smart. 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 We will fight until we get it right. One more time. We will fight until we get it right.
Okay, seriously, this is about all of us, right? And we understand that we're not just chanting. The reality is mediocrity can't be an option no more for our children. And if we're not the ones to fight, stand up and deliver what we feel is our right, not just a responsibility, but it's our right to be educated. It's our right to have not only an education, but a quality education for our children. And we're not going to continue to negotiate with people about what they feel like the education of our children should be. So this is just one of many, but this is a very serious endeavor because as adults, we have to lead the fight for our babies so that our babies could then lead the fight for the next generation to follow.
Chandra has always been for young people.
It has a very strong connection
with her students. In the various groups that she worked with here in town, there was always that constant element, constant value of connecting one-on-one or with a group of young people to get them to see that there is hope for your life.
Chan's probably the reason I got into college, like, honestly.
And hope that they could really make something of themselves and make good choices about what they wanted to do and also help others in the process.
She's probably one of the most dynamic young African women that I've met in terms of her work in the field of education. I think she's very committed to her work and very diligent in the way she carries out her mission.
Dr. Gill to me is Miss Enterprise. I've been telling her that for years.
I believe in her being the next generation of leaders.
One of the premier leaders in the country. She is a community organizer. She's a teacher. She's what we call a spirit keeper. And our young people need that.
Things aren't getting any better. In fact, to the contrary, they're actually getting worse. And she's the kind of person we need to instill that type of attitude into young people that we really have to have.